All right, we're back.
New Year.
We're also live on Insta as well.
Nice.
Which is great. Let me see. Yeah, there we go. Okay. Hold on, I had echo. It's a huge headache to go and pull it down, and then putting it up is not hard. Putting it down and removing it from the areas, I still think I have the podcast listed on some Facebook sites. So was trying to pull it down, and I couldn't get all of them down. But it is what it is. We did a U-turn here, and we're ready to roll. A little college football. There's a lot going on. First of all, I'm curious. Did you see the Cat Williams podcast at Club Shay Shay?
I did not.
You should watch the highlights at least. It's wild. Do you know the comedian Cat Williams?
No.
You don't know who he is? Okay, then you should watch it. It's pretty wild. It was pretty wild with Shannon Sharp.
Oh, Shannon Sharp, man, he's a trip.
Yeah, it's Club Shay. You should see this podcast. It's got in 48 hours 11.5 million views.
They must have said some interesting things.
Oh no, I'm telling you, this guy Cat Williams, who's like a comedian, throws so many people under the bus. It's
in
crazy.
In regards to what?
It's a lot of Hollywood stuff. It's
so he'll be trending.
It's like Illuminati stuff. It's wild.
Oh, see, I'm not. Look,
it's wild to listen to though. I'm telling you,
but like, and then it's like really like what, like why is he doing that? Like, what's the reason?
I don't know. But
yeah, what's his motive? Is he?
It blew up. It blew up Shannon Sharp's podcast. He's at like when you do a little, I don't want you to get into because this is what happens with the algorithms. I watched.
Yeah, then that's what you're going to be getting conspiracy theories for the next. Like,
I know that's what happens. I watch one or two clips, and next thing you know, I'm like, everything is this. I'm like, oh, I just wanted to watch a couple of clips. I didn't want to watch 50 clips.
Yeah, now that's all you're going to get.
Yep, but college football. So interesting. We'll talk to transfer portal tape, but obviously national championship game coming up. That'll be great. It's a great matchup. But talking to transfer portal, which is so interesting to me. First, Kirby Smart going, and so the Florida State game where Florida State gets blown out by Georgia 63-3.
Ugly.
Missing 25 players, right? Either declared or
either declared for the draft, either opted out or hurt
or portal. And he talks about how the NCAA, like and now supposedly Dabo Sweeney went on something and talked about the same thing because he's the opposite end. He doesn't really use the transfer portal.
No, he's spoken out against it like a lot.
And then a few of the coach, Nick Saban, obviously, he's touched on this stuff. So it's going to be interesting. The transfer portal, and I did a podcast on it, and I did like a webinar on it, and a lot of parents like reached out about it.
Clueless. That's because they're clueless. They don't know.
Not the transfer athletes know what's up.
Yeah, because they've done their research, they've done their homework. They're.
It's a risk. It's a risk, obviously, and
of course,
unless you're a top tier guy, but they understand the process a little better. The high school athletes don't understand what's going on at all, and the parents
even worse.
And they admit it too.
100%.
They don't understand, like, how am I? And I could say, like, I'm just saying, like, hey, you got to go at this the best way you can, and market the athlete and all those kind of things. But you may do everything that you think is right, and you may not get where you think your child could be. Let's take the rose-colored glasses off. Let's say before he would have been a group of 5 FBS school. he may fall to FCS. He maybe before he was an FCS, he may fall to D2, and it could have nothing to do with anybody what they're doing, but you have to explore all your resources, because if you don't, it's much harder now. And like, well, why is it harder? I'm like, well, simple.
It's numbers.
You know who Deion Sanders is, right?
Yeah.
They're like, yes. Well, he's taking 4 or 5 kids, high school kids, period. And the only ones taking are literally trying to get 4 or 5-star guys. And if he doesn't get those, he's going to the transfer portal for everybody else.
Yep. I watched his the documentary that he's been releasing every week on Amazon Prime. The latest episode, he's in there and he's talking about, like, look, unless, even taking transfers, right? Like, he doesn't want some transfer that's been sitting on the bench. He wants a transfer that's played at least 500 snaps at their previous school, was a starter, if not a big name. Like, so even that in itself, it's not just like, hey, I'm taking whoever in the transfer portal. Like, no, I'm taking guys that can come in and play right now. And like you were saying, I think guys can do everything right in the recruiting process, right? They can go to camps, they can go to shows, they can do everything that they're supposed to do, talk to coaches, do it all the right way, and they're still not going to get it. And that's just kind of what we're living in right now.
And this is the tough part. This is the thing that people have to understand, and I think it's critical. So in the past, people thought you could find me. All right.
Yeah.
Now, 4 and 5 stars. Yeah. Like, look, we write up 5 stars. Like, yes, 5 stars, they are found. Okay. We get it. They're the guy. They're not the guy that rushed for 1,000 yards in your season. They're the guy that ran for 2,500 yards, 3,000 yards. They're the lineman that's 6'7". Okay. So to get a perspective on what level, there's plenty of Division I players that aren't. They're all freaks, but they're not mega freak out, right? So the 4 and 5 stars, they don't have to worry about that. Everybody else really has to optimize, and that's the key word, how they do things, right? Like, you want to go to as many things as you can, but you don't have to travel the country worldwide to do it. You have to pick the right resources to do it. And that's, I think, the thing. I mean, like with the stuff that we're doing, what I'm blown away at is how successful it is, and it really has to do with the people that are involved in helping. And now there are other people like us, but the people that are involved in helping with the process. And that's a key element to it, because if you're someone looking to get out there, I've talked to so many parents that have spent money in, and the guy's like, yeah, he worked for XYZ company. He played college ball. He's just out of college, 24. I'm like, how is he going to help? He's 24 years old. How is he going to help? All right, is he a wide receiver coach? Okay, maybe that'll work.
Right. But other than him, other than him having like a buddy on a staff or something, or somebody that just played whatever, like, what are these guys like? What do they bring to the table? Right? Like, what do they bring to the table? And like, hey, I can help you. What does that mean? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's just, I think you need to leverage everything you can, but I think and use those resources, but that can't be the end all be all.
Resources. Leverage mass reach resources. People who can talk to
people that aren't just going to be able to contact one.
They don't need to just know one person. Yeah, right. Your neighbor who knows one guy is not going to help you.
Like, I know somebody.
What happens when you call to one guy? Yeah, I know a guy in Alabama. Okay, hi, I have John Smith. Here's his film. What do you think about him? Crickets. Oh, well, I don't know more guys.
You'll never even get a response from most of these people. We talk about that all the time, right? Like, and these are people that, like, we have personal relationships with, right? Like, and those guys don't get back to us because it's what it is. It's
you have to have enough reach, that you have enough relationships that you can reach, and that eventually, because there is a place for everybody, that you can find a place
right.
But if you don't have enough resources, that's where kids get left in the dust. So the transfer portal is like completely changed everything
and fast.
And
like fast, like within 2 seasons, right? Like within 2 cycles, you've now seen even guys that got in the portal in that first wave, right, aren't even close to these guys in this second wave in terms of the NIL stuff and all that other stuff, right? Lane Kiffin spoke on it the other day and said, hey, when you get in this transfer portal matters. Because if you're one of these original guys, you might have been getting this, but now this new wave, it's kind of like, you know, how free agency in the NFL goes, you know, one guy at a certain position sets the market. And then before you know it, every contract that comes after that, you know, kind of goes that way. That's the way NIL is. And these guys don't, like, you know, not everybody's getting the same money. Okay. That's very, and now how do you handle the locker room in terms of that? Because now it's like a pro locker room. Your quarterback makes this, a receiver makes this, linemen make this. This guy might not make anything, right? There's a whole nother part of the coaching world that now you have to balance, and you're talking about stuff that, you know, in terms of who's getting what money.
It is, and I think the money thing, like eventually, I think people will start to fall in line on that because the pro aspect, like once they get used to it, it's like, hey, this guy's getting this. This is how it is. The hardest thing is the mind frame of the athlete, which is why they like the transfer portal. Okay, if I'm a coach who and my staff, their job hinges on the performance of these athletes, which is the truth. If the kid, I'm going to give money to somebody, I'm going to give it to a guy who, even if he played, let's say he played at Delaware's now going Division One. William and Mary, right, and threw for 2,500 yards at William and Mary. That's a much better prospect for me than a high school kid, even if he is a pretty high level guy.
Even if he's coming from St. John Bosco in California, right? Or
high school
Gorman,
right.
or just like, because why? This guy's ready made. I know he can compete. He's already shown me, right? He it's less just everything on me in terms of, and he's going to help me now. I'm not going to have to spend it.
Ready made. The key word is years ago. You redshirted. Then they got away with
to develop you, right?
To get you went out the window for the most part. Like, I mean, they use it when they need to, but for the most part, they want you ready made,
right? And then it went to like, okay, so now high school guys are graduating mid-year, so they can get in for spring ball, right? And they can get a jump start on that, right? Now that's like, okay, these guys are going in, transfer portal guys. This season has, you know, they walk away. Maybe if their team's playing in a bowl game, hey, I'm in the transfer portal because we know that's all going on while teams are still in season. You know, this guy might be at practice on Monday, and all of a sudden bowl practice starts and he's nowhere to be found, but now he's on another roster. Like, you know, it's
you type in transfer portal to Google and in Google, and it's mind blowing. You look at, like, Alabama had 10 players going to transfer portal, I think, on the 2nd or whatever. Like, literally the last day that you could kind of go in.
Right.
Ohio State.
Oh, but that's a whole
different animal because, like,
11-1 quarterback.
He left, and then they're trying to find another guy because the guy who played in the bowl game was not very successful.
Nope.
Not that he won't be. He didn't have much time, but like he wasn't very successful. So now they're trying to find a quarterback out of the transfer portal. It's so funny because, you know, I look at it like this, like and coaches have to are struggling to adapt to this. Like Ohio State, Ryan Day, when he was approached. If this all was true, I don't know. No, Ryan Day's never talked about this, but if this all was true, the dad asked, that's what they say, the dad asked if he was going to be the starter next year, and he said, obviously it's Ohio State, we got to compete. But if you think about it now, like, that's kind of the what you would normally say before the transfer portal. You would have said that, right? Now, he was being honest as far as what his approach was, but basically you had a starter, and now you, not on purpose, alienated your starter in some way, shape, or form. And now you thought your other guys were as good. You find out they may not be as good. Now you're actually back in the portal trying to get a kid that was as good as the kid you just lost because you said one thing and that's kind of the world it is. It's a world where you have to manage expectations on a regular basis, and not that you don't normally, but kids are going to move, and there's no, like, I don't see the NCAA right now putting in parameters. Like, I think it would have to come from like Congress saying, when they do their little they bring them down and they ask questions about it to see if they want to make maybe a rule about it.
I mean,
all those in front of Congress.
I think the whole, you know what I mean? Listen, there's a lot of factors that go into it right now too. I think you're dealing with a certain type of kid that's been raised a certain way, right? And it has nothing to do with them themselves. It's just how they were raised in terms of ask questions, right? Stand up for yourself. Everybody deserves a fair shot, all that kind of stuff. And so now you're starting to see it. And then now the rules, right, are kind of aiding in that process of allowing that stuff to happen. And so now you're seeing just, all right, well, one did it, now two do it, and now it's a domino effect. It's kind of snowballing. I think the NCAA, I look, they're in the business of just making money. I mean, we kind of understand that whole process, but at the same
I don't know.
time,
The NCAA doesn't make money from football. That's part of the issue.
And it's the bowl games, right? That now it's just like a whole different. It's a whole different whatever.
The NCAA makes money from basketball because they run the NCAA tournament.
Right.
College football is a college football playoff. That's a separate organization. So that is not, they're under the NCAA rules, but that is not owned by the NCAA. So that's an important thing to understand. So when people so you really have a situation in football, not necessarily basketball, but in football where the NCAA is regulating all this, but as far as their control over the championship and those kinds, they really don't. They don't run the championship, right? So when that happens, and essentially the conferences run the conferences, and then, oh, by the way, NCAA, please enforce the rules. So when you have the conferences going on with all the things that are going on, football dictating all the things that are going on, I don't think the NCAA has the staff or is
absolutely not
to handle. They rely on committees.
Plus, they're bullied. You know what I mean? Like these guys,
they are getting bullied.
Yeah, like you know what I mean? Like it's like at the end of the day, let's call it what it is. And you're now starting to see though these higher level programs with more donors and more just overall money and stuff of that nature now are starting to what it looks like aid in the process of helping you recruit, change your roster, all those kind of things, because with NIL and all this other stuff, the transfer portal, guys can just go here and there and all of these places, and if you have a good NIL collective, like you're kind of set. I think those are the things that, like, I think the NIL idea was a good idea, but I think the parameters that were I think now it's becoming the Wild West, and I think they'll get it together because I think they'll have to. Otherwise, it's just going to be I don't pandemonium. And I think the coaches are kind of lobbying for certain things. But you can see a guy like Deion Sanders come on in and do things that we've never seen done before. And, there's no precedent to kind of hold it, accountable.
Well, you don't know the only precedent would be if he won or lost, right? So if he lost and it failed, you would know there's the precedent for that. If he wins and he's successful, there's a precedent. So, and right now it's in limbo because it's only his first year, and it was
right.
You wouldn't argue it was not successful. So you wouldn't say it was unsuccessful to say that he failed, but because the team wasn't good the year before. But it was unsuccessful in the fact that by flipping the roster, it didn't change the record in a radically different way. So
Right.
next
Sold
year,
more tickets.
yeah. Oh no, it did sell tickets. Next year will be interesting because you'll have a second year of sample size,
Right.
and then you'll know, okay, is this really working his philosophy? Is this making the change? And then the other thing is like, well, guys like Kirby Smart and Nick Saban, they use the transfer portal. Um, but like, what if those guys actually went all in and turned their rosters over? You could have like, you could. That's not their philosophy, but let's say that was their philosophy. They could very quickly retool all the little areas that they're missing with depth and take all the players if they really wanted to, because they could say, okay, you 40 started this year and played, the other 45 didn't. You guys are gone, and then we'll get 45 new guys. They're not doing that yet per se, but if they lose a couple more times and feel they need to, I could see, not because they
And what's to stop the best players in the country from going there?
nothing. I mean, I think
Exactly.
it's nothing.
Like if you're the best, like, all right, let's say you're a guy at Texas, right? You just made the college football playoff, but all of a sudden, Georgia calls. Okay, well, why not? Right?
Well, Arch Manning, all that controversy with like Arch Manning, like is he gonna like he's not jumping in the portal? But it's interesting because, like, if you think about it from Arch Manning's standpoint, he was the number one player. There's another year that he's probably not going to play, right?
Right, because Quinn Ewers come back.
If Quinn Ewers come out, which he's gonna. Quinn Ewers now has to. He didn't play good enough, so
He
now
didn't win the game.
Right. So now Quinn Ewers has to come back.
But here's my because
and what if
let's say hang on, let's say what if let's say like, all right, maybe we're a group of guys on a team, right? And it's quarterback, receiver, running back, whatever. What's to stop the three of us from saying, look, let's get a package deal somewhere. All three of us will go somewhere, one school.
We know who did that? The two twin brothers that were they were technically linebackers at UCLA, but they would, I don't know if you saw the game. There was a big game they won. I can't remember who it was, but they were, no, I watched them play Colorado. These two brothers, okay, were linebackers, but they would line up at D tackle and at nose guard and at D end, and they would come off the edge, and they had like a zillion sacks in that game between the two of them. They were unbelievable athletes, but they look like linebackers. They're probably like 6'3", like 220 or, type of thing. They transferred as a package, the both of them, from North Texas. They were very good players at North Texas, highly productive. I think
just use your leverage.
And both of them came as a package to UCLA. So now UCLA didn't get one guy; they got two. They got two. And but you're right. Like you could, the Sanders, look, Shador and his brother, right?
Or maybe like, hey, like, you know what I mean? Like, hey, I'm at this school, right?
You all went to high school together.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I went here, you went there. Look, let's go. Let's pick a place and let's all go. You know what I'm saying? Like, why not? Right? Like, you get some of these schools that produce these dudes, they get to college and it's like, yo, these guys, my high school teammates were better. Like,
Or you had a better, even if their talent level was the same as another guy, them, right? So you grew up around them, so you feel comfortable with them. And if you played at a high level program together,
now here's the big one that I think is gonna, and we're seeing it a little bit already, right? Guys that commit to a place, right? And maybe they commit to the coach, right? Position coach. And now all of a sudden this position coach ends up somewhere else. I'm taking all these recruits with me, right? So now you're going to see guys, same type of gig, doing all that stuff, using the transfer portal and using that other stuff to be like, hey, my guy's here now. How do I get here? Or, hey, I'm going to bring you in here. Guess what? Here's your NIL here.
Exactly. I think that's that's a big thing.
And I think you're seeing it a little, like you're seeing guys do it, and look, it's happened a lot, but it's now, it's always happened. But I think now the amount that's happening is because with the transfer portal, it's easier. You can just go and do it. Right. Whereas you had to jump through a couple hoops. Look at Fran Brown.
Yep, exactly. And what you have is,
up at Syracuse.
And Fran Brown is doing a great job with getting all those guys over there. He got the quarterback from Ohio State. He got
he flipped some big commits from certain places. You know what I mean? Like, he's bringing in these guys. And like it said, same type of thing with Dion, right? Like, obviously it has to show on the field because ultimately you're judged by wins and losses, right? But that stuff's all in line.
Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting in the offseason.
A lot of the conference changes too. Now you're seeing USC and UCLA in the Big Ten, like money markets.
And I think the kind of coach that is needed at college, like, did you watch? No, I don't know if you watch him or not, but there was a really interesting thing where, like, Warren Sapp and Marshall Faulk were talking to Jason Whitlock, and they're very frustrated with. Oh, did I cut out here? Am I frozen?
Are you frozen? You are frozen.
I am frozen, but you can hear me.
Correct. Which means usually what happens is you usually blank out for a couple seconds.
Well, this happens, by the way, every time, every single podcast.
Well, remember, I used to have all those connection issues, and then I started doing it off my phone. It's just so much easier.
That's what I'm gonna have to do in the long run.
Or I'm gonna have to, like, really revamp the whole system and get, like, a whole bunch of, like, new stuff. But so, like I said, this is what happens. Coach Schuman goes missing, right, for a couple times, and usually the guest and I kind of just do our thing. But listen, like we were talking about in terms of kind of, the whole NCAA transfer portal, all this kind of stuff. The guys that are in college already and are now getting into the transfer portal, like Coach was saying, understand it, because this is literally their livelihood. And they're making a decision where they're virtually and essentially giving up getting their education paid for 100% to go and try to get that at a different place. You're back.
I'm back. Oh, by the way, so we're on Instagram Live right now. I think it's the first time I did it without doing a replay live. This is actually live. So if you're on it now, like, you're probably able to ask I don't know. Maybe I would have to sit on my Instagram to answer questions. I don't know. But I guess I need Big Smitty to do my podcast too, right?
Coach JB.
Yeah, but so what was I saying? So Marshall Faulk was kind of, it was crazy. He was kind of complaining about not getting opportunities. I think he was talking more media, but and Warren Sapp, and they were kind of complaining about it, and I mean,
well, Sapp, I think, is going to Colorado with Dion.
Yeah, but they were talking about coach, ex-players again, and Whitlock was trying to explain, like, these guys went the road of learning how to coach, type of thing, and while you were playing, and they're like, well, isn't there some level of experience with playing that you translate? I'm like, playing experience does translate to understanding what players go through.
Right.
It translates in maybe understanding some level of scheme. But outside of the quarterback position, maybe like the safety or middle linebacker position, maybe the center on the line, everybody's pretty focused on their own world, right? Where they don't worry about other people as much, right? So it doesn't necessarily translate outside of your position. Now, if you were to say positional opportunities, I would say, okay, maybe you're right? Because if I played the position, I know the techniques in my position. I could probably, if I have the ability, the temperament to coach, I can maybe coach the position.
Right.
A management level position like coordinator or head coach or something like that, to me is a little bit different. But what was interesting is this, and just from the transfer portal, the type of I don't know why my phone's blowing. The type of coach that is required, and it may not be coach, it may be staff member because they're all able to put as many staff members as they want now. So maybe your coach, your position coach is the same kind of guy. Maybe you don't, as these $1 billion keep rolling through. Maybe your guy is like, hey, listen, the only kind of thing on recruiting I need you to do is talk to a couple kids that might be your position guy when we get down to it. Maybe second look at a film of a guy. But eventually, I think you're going to have, and you've seen it in a few places, you're going to have the parallel to like the NFL system. Head coach, all of his staff, analysts, assistants, personnel, right? And you already see teams doing a good amount of it, but it's like one personnel guy or two personnel guys. Like eventually that staff, and I don't think there's a limitation on your personnel off the field staff. I think there's a limitation of your on the field staff. But with your off the field staff, I think you're going to have head scout, area scout.
You're going to have an entire quote-unquote recruiting department that's so much more than what it is now. It's not just going to be somebody who's sitting there monitoring Twitter and all this other kind of stuff. Your coaches, you could actually now have a coach that's like, hey, dude, you're just going to coach. Okay. Yeah. Maybe you have to shake a hand with a parent here or there, or call a kid or shoot a text. But think about it. Even that, other than a FaceTime or a face-to-face, you could have your GA texting these kids and not have, these kids not have a clue. Now, is that the right way to go about it? I don't know. If it gets,
you might have your general manager, your director of player personnel, or your head of transfer portal personnel, whatever you call it.
The staffing now at the college level is going to, and I mean, look, and you see it when these guys take over, Matt Rule takes over at Nebraska, all of a sudden, all these other positions are on board and within the staff itself, right? And then the bigger the budgets, the more people you can get into the program and pay. Now, the more staffing you have, the better things are going to probably go for you, because you just have more people to handle those specific jobs, whereas now one guy isn't wearing 7 hats. Right? Like, I'm not going to coming off the field to watching film with my guys, to texting recruits, to doing this, to having a visit over here and then sign this, or you know what I mean? Like, somebody is going to be assigned. Each coach is almost going to have their own little group of whatever to handle the day-to-days.
Right. So where the money, if it continues to come in, especially at the bigger programs, that allows you to really kind of shape. I know they don't want to do it because they like the college model, and I agree with that, but that's kind of out the window right now. So, but the way you're shaping it is like two big trees, right? And those trees have all these different tentacles, and they have roles within it. And that GM, player personnel person, which used to be on the staff, was a throwaway. Literally was a throwaway guy. I like this guy. He coached for 30 years. I want to give him something that I can have him do that will create value. Now that guy is valuable, really, really valuable.
It's the same, Dion has a player personnel staff. Like, and this guy said, like, what is your job? Well, my job is to get the best players here.
I heard that guy talk. That was the guy.
Yeah, this is what.
Right. He doesn't even. He knows the players by their film. He doesn't know the players.
He don't know who they are.
I mean, he might know them when he walks by them.
I'm sure,
but he's not spending time with them in that way. His job is
and I think they do that on purpose, because now it doesn't get personal, and now you don't feel like, oh, well, he's a good kid. Like, no, dude, he ain't performing. I don't care. Goodbye. Right. And it keeps it that business structure mentality of, and that's where the disconnect or the battle is between, the OGs who want to keep this college football team, all that kind of stuff. And then there's a whole,
they're not wrong, but it's not how it is.
And then the other group that's, business minded, out for myself. What can I do to kind of help myself get to wherever I need to be? You got two really kind of big things clashing. And it's like, well, pick a side.
Well, I don't know about that. I think it's a mix of both. So I think you're going to need both groups of people. I think you're going to need the people because look, their departments aren't just so their departments are coaches and all the analysts that do football related activity, direct on the field activity,
Right.
or analyze on the field activity. Then you have personnel, which is everything scouting, transfer portal, recruiting, everything along those lines, which I absolutely is
Social media,
much more business like. Well, then there's then that's the question is the third part, which you just mentioned, which is NIL, marketing, sales, I guess. Like where does that go within the organization? Because it is part of personnel to an extent, right? You
need to have a whole business department.
It's like literally a business department for football. Like that's not even. I see them do like when you go on. If you ever, I don't know if you ever go up on the staffing, but when I go up on the staffing, there are some places that have kind of all three areas. They just haven't mapped it out that way. There are some places that just have one or two people listed in that area. And I'm like, oh my God, that's bad for them in the long run. Like that, like those people must be working round the clock doing 50 million different jobs. You know what I'm saying? Like it really becomes, honestly, the best way to think about it is
you've literally
a factory. You think about a factory, okay? An actual factory. And everybody has a job in that factory, right? Like there's a manager of the factory. There's a CEO. There's a line manager. There's a guy that manages the union group. There's the actual line workers. There's people who specialize in, I don't know, communications or electronics or market.
Yeah, everybody has their own little specialty or entity or part of, in order to make this run, this department handles this department handles that, this department handles that. And those guys are specialized in those areas. You know, very rarely do you see people jump back and forth or overlap, which is kind of what the traditional way of college football was, right? Like not only are you the D-line coach, but you're also, you know, you also need to recruit and scout, and you're responsible for this state and this county. And then, hey, you know, you have to make sure that you're reaching out to this recruit and you're doing this. Like you wear a lot of hats. And now with the way this is, just the overall attention that needs to be, and this is without even talking about retaining guys on your own roster.
Right. Well, who was responsible for that? So so the coach is obviously ultimately responsible, but you need somebody, because there is such turnover, that also is like a staff guy that is, hey, you know, here's what's going on with you. Here's what, you know, we like. Here's what we don't like. You know, all right, let's set a meeting with you with coach so we can discuss these things. Like,
like an HR department within the staff itself.
Yeah, like is it HR? But it's something like that. Yeah, absolutely. It's personnel, but it's if you've ever seen like NFL kind of departments, like these groups they have multiple levels. There's really three levels. There's foot on the field, there's personnel, and then there's business. Right. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's really three, and they all kind of cross over in some way, shape, or form, which usually in a company, on top of all of those people in the NFL, it's called an owner, right? Or CEO. But here, there really isn't. The CEO / head coach. Right. That's a tough job.
But then here's the other part. Like, is it, or is the athletic director that guy?
That's a tough job for the athletic
director. Is the president that guy?
Right? Normally, I would say, yes, that's the athletic director. But, oh, by the way, you're the athletic director. Not only are you in charge of all of this big, gigantic thing called football, and, oh, by the way, you have to do basketball, baseball. So in the NFL organization, it's not like they're doing soccer and you know, they're focused on one sport.
Think about above the athletic director. Now you have like the president of the school. So not only does he have to worry about, like, you know, now he's worrying about not only the athletic director, all the academics and all of that other stuff that goes along. And then it just like, who had like,
there actually really does. It's the biggest schools, the group of 5 schools. I don't think they need some version of it, but they probably don't have the money to do a full. At the Alabamas of the world, the Georgias, and the top tier
guys you see on TV.
You almost need like the owners, I guess, are like the university board of trustees, but within the athletic department, within football, you almost need like literally. It sounds crazy to people, like a CEO, and then there's a head coach is underneath the CEO. The head of business, whatever you want to call him, is under the CEO, and the general manager, just like you have in the NFL, is underneath the CEO because his job is personnel and all that stuff. And you really need those three entities. But as you have right now, which is why these coaches are upset, and they rightfully look, they're millionaires, and do they need to complain being millionaires? No. But as far as why they probably feel like they're tugged at every corner is because usually in a company, the head coach is not the CEO. Okay, the head coach reports to in a university an athletic director who acts as the CEO. But it's gotten so big that the athletic director actually needs a CEO underneath him to run the football department, to run all of football. And the head coaches definitely don't want this because that means they could be fired at any time, right? Like
it also means just less exo football.
Well, it might allow them more exo football. So I'm saying if you had a guy that managed.
I get it. So like basically what your DFO, right, handles like for you all the organizational type of stuff. But now like
DFO what we played was here's the itinerary. We're getting on the bus at 8. You know, that's not what it is anymore. You know,
let me blow this horn at 2 minutes.
No, that's not what it is. But now it is a situation where you have I mean it's going to evolve that way. And football coaches, they may end up liking some parts of that more and may hate other parts, like less control, quote unquote, but more football. So what's the trade-off? Is that good or is that bad?
Right.
Because eventually, how you not at worst that what they're going to have is 3 tiers that are going to have to work together under the athletic director, which is GM, business manager, and head coach, and they have to work.
And if you really want to like call it for what it is, like these higher level programs, you know, your Ohio States, your Alabamas, you know, these guys of the world have been kind of doing this behind the scenes, or at least had somewhat of a framework that modeled, you know, what the NFL does in terms of that. Now, maybe it's not the same names or any of that, but it's somewhat modeled like that for these guys to transition. And that was kind of always, well, we don't have that at, you know, here, or we don't have that here, you know. But now I think like, you know, so a lot of those guys kind of have been, but I just think it's on a different level.
Go on the staffing thing and like the biggest schools and see how they've started building it out. They still haven't figured out how they want to branch it, but they've been building it out. Like when Vanderbilt, and I'm not talking about whether it's successful or not, but when Vanderbilt hired Clark Lee, they hired Barton Simmons as the general manager, and Barton Simmons does nothing on the field. Barton Simmons used to be like, you know, how Mike Farrell was a rival.
He was
one of the rivals guys. They literally hired him all in charge of all the personnel. Mm-hmm. How do we get kids into here? Managing all the, like, he literally got hired in that role. He has 0 on the field role, but he's probably paid because he's probably paid very well.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, several $100,000, right? So the point is that role is going to become key because you know what else it is? It's a leadership role too.
Absolutely. It's like an administrative role.
It really is an administrative role. Someone who's able to lead other people.
Especially if you've done stuff like that before or whatever your history is. I just think the whole evolution of football itself is going to be, you know, it's getting overhauled right now in terms of, because it's just adapting to kind of what's going on.
You know who said, I got to give him a shout out. And you know who he works at Florida State. He's GA with them in the personnel, and you'll know this name as soon as I say it to you. I got to give him a shout out because I was talking to him, and he was very excited about football because of it's expanding so much at the big schools that there's going to be more and more opportunities. I never thought about how he said it, but he said the industry is booming. That's the word he used. And, so I said there's going to be more and more opportunities at the college level, probably similar to NFL, maybe more.
Absolutely.
Maybe more than the NFL, maybe more. But the person is, and you'll love him. He was one of our players, and he was one of our linebackers is Will Dalpra. So Will Dalpra works in the Florida State Athletic Department.
Perfect spot
for football, and but he is. But I loved what he said there because it's the industry is exploding, and I never thought about it that way. Like, because you when you see transfer portal, when you see NIL, when everybody talks about, coaches, this frustrates them. When he mentioned, I thought, you know what, that's a really, really keen insight, because what he's saying is there's going to be more opportunities because
absolutely
for more people to get involved in football. And that's great. Maybe I can make an actual career in it, and I think that's, whether he does or he doesn't, that's the thought process.
Right. Where there only used to be,
when we came out, that wasn't really, think about the road when we came out.
That's what I was saying. Like, you think about it, like where there used to be only 12 jobs per staff, and now you're going to have 25, 30
50
jobs
maybe.
per staff.
50, you might have 50.
Right? Like, who knows? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just creates more opportunities within a career that you really wasn't, unless you were a coach or, like maybe you saw a lot of these, like, film guys or an equipment guy, right? But now, like, there's just going to be more of these jobs. And to be honest, you see some of these guys marketing that are hiring, they've never done any, some of these guys have no background in football whatsoever, but they're getting hired to do marketing or to do the business aspect of it, right? Like, and maybe sometimes to have that non-football perspective might be a benefit. Like, who knows?
I think there's pros and cons. I think coaches, some head coaches look at it as a possible negative in the loss of control. But
they're going to be threatened.
But if you look at it from an economic standpoint, I don't mean profit. I mean economic. More jobs are available for more people. So if we look at it from that standpoint, that's very positive. When we were coming out, I remember when I mentioned it to Coach Holtz about, GA and like what we could do. And basically the only role was like, you could be a GA as a coach GA kind of. And this is a long time ago. Obviously I'm older, but that was really it, man. That's all you could do. And unless you really knew that's what you wanted to be at that time.
No, there wasn't really anything you could do.
You couldn't.
There's only so many GA spots. It wasn't like, hey, why don't you go GA in the equipment department, or why don't you go GA in the business department, right? It was, no, you're going to be one of the 3 GAs we get, and if you're not that on the field guy, and you're going to be the grunt, and you're going to have to do all the work and all this other, like that stuff, like, now I can go slide into a different department.
Right. It used to be, listen, you're on the field. And, oh, by the way, you're also watching old bits of film. You're doing like everybody.
Yeah. And then guess what? When I'm going home, make sure you contact all these recruits and make sure everything's on point. And then make sure we know that when these guys come in tomorrow morning, the film's ready to go and everything's cut up and all my cards are done. Like, dude, there's a reason that the burnout rate was what it was.
That might be crazy, but I think it's true. For opportunities for more people to be involved in football, it's probably very good.
Right.
For coaches who are used to dealing with consistency and stability, it's not good, right?
Coaches don't like
as a coach. What do you want? You want to know what player you're going to coach. You want to know you're going to have this guy for 3 years, and you can develop him. You want it like. That stability to you is one of the reasons why you like coaching. You like the fact that you could develop someone. That's the reason. Now you flip it to the other side. Does a general manager, is stability in the roster a big deal, or is it the best roster that's big? Well, to the general manager personnel, the best roster is the big deal, not stability. A little bit different than the coach. And then you bring in the business people. I'm the marketing social media guy.
Right. Like, oh, this kid. And now listen, now you're going to have these conversations where, hey, this guy is a marketing guru. Like, we could do so much with him. We can do all this. But guess what? He ain't the best player at his position. So what are we going to do? Do we keep him on for this? Or, you know what I mean? Like, maybe we keep him on and just, use him to push the program in terms of clicks and likes and whatever. How soon before you start to see guys start
and
doing
the
shit like that?
department, you'll have a department that will like, so you see it now. Like, there were
some talk about well-rounded players. Like, not only do you have to be the best player that runs the fastest and does the best on the field, but now you also have to be this type of person that does this off the field or whatever.
You remember when EJ Barthel first went to UConn, and they had and Moore just first went there, and before they even playing, and they had a very good first year where they had this. I don't know who was doing their social media, but remember how good the social media was, like their posts and stuff. They had all these incredible, like, it was really, it was a change.
They hit on a good intern.
Somebody, that's what I think. Like, I feel like they had some, and then the next, if you look now, I haven't seen anything. Right. So my thing is, whoever that person was did really
good. Go find where they are, bro.
You're the man. And they hired him at, like, Alabama. You know what I'm saying? They're
somebody
who's doing their social
department
media?
Went up when that person got there.
Yeah, somebody went in and said, "Who does the social media for UConn? Who's the guy?" John Smith. John Smith. All of a sudden, he starts getting calls from Georgia, Clemson. Like, they're like, "Hey, man, we're gonna give you $50,000 more a year." And
yep. And guess what? And I'm going to pay for your grad studies. And guess what? Like, you know what I mean? Like, look at all the opportunities you're going to have just by doing. And all you have to do is come here and do what you're doing with way more. And I'm going to also give you a staff. You're going to have 3 other people. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care what just check in with this person and, that, and then go do whatever you want. Like, you're good to go. Okay.
Mind-blowing, isn't it?
Where do I sign on that dotted line?
I think that whole thing is actually really cool because,
that's the part too
that will give the football coach in the long run, once it gets worked out. Right now is totally a transition, and I totally get why they're frustrated. Right?
Oh, hell yeah! If you were a coach right now, like,
if it once it evolves and gets
once it kind of hashes out and shakes out to, like,
pro coaches love their job. Why do pro coaches love their job? They just coach football. That's it.
This guy handles the marketing and tells me I got to be here for an appearance at this time. I need hey, you got a meeting with your owner at, whatever. Like, that's it. What do I worry about? Make sure that guy is playing at the highest level possible. You want to talk contracts and money? Go talk to this guy, right? Now, I'm sure as a head coach in the NFL, you have to have some, you know what I mean, in terms of that. But
yeah, the head guys still have to do
the
more,
days of, hey, Belichick, like, you're the head coach, you're the GM, you're the.
Do you think the wide receiver coach in the NFL, do you even know who most of the wide receiver coaches are in the NFL? No, because they coach football, man. That's what
you
they
barely
do.
know a coordinator. Okay, maybe, but not unless it's, you know what I'm saying? The only time you really know a coordinator is when they get fired.
Right, and those position coaches, they're making $500,000, and they don't have to worry about anything. They got to worry about these 5 guys right over here.
These 5 guys, and listen, hey, I need this play from this. Okay, film guy, thank you. Okay, coach, here's your clips.
So I think that evolution at the highest level, FBS, will in the long run.
Now, it's not going to aid any of the lower levels because they just don't have the money.
Painful. No, lower level, honestly. So I look at, like, FCS and below, and I think, yeah, it might be a little bit. It's really not that stressful for them. You just take the leftovers, man. Take the leftovers and make do. And you know what? Even though it's annoying that your star player who catches 50 balls for you is now at Alabama, you just go get the next leftover. You don't have to. You don't need the scouting department because big schools are doing it for you.
And then guys that want to speak out against that and get all salty about that, like, that's great. What are you only going to do, though? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you're not going to change it. or whatever. So you might as well just embrace it, own it, and just move on from it, and just say, hey, you know what? Yeah, like that guy left, but guess who developed him, right? And then let's say that happens again. Well, then guess what? Guess who's going to start to get a reputation of developing? Like, hey, that guy can develop guys at this level. Now what? It only aids in your recruiting because now people are going to want to go to your school because they have an opportunity to whatever. If that's just what it is, then own it.
That's an insightful thing too. I didn't think about that. So I coach 5 guys at wide receiver that all, after catching 60 balls for me consecutively, unfortunately, but they leave and they go to 5 big time schools. I think that those schools eventually are going to say, who is that wide receiver coach? Like, this guy keeps producing guys that are
if nothing else. It gets me on some type of.
You're going to go somewhere. So your own career is going to be advanced. I think that you're definitely. Oh, we got a situation where it becomes. If you think about it, if you flip your thinking a little bit into what the positives are of it, instead of always thinking like,
right, and instead of always thinking it's a negative or any type of change. Now, look, I'm a traditionalist too, man. Like I love
most people your age or above is a traditionalist.
Like it's what it is, right? Like it's football. It's about being in a huddle. It's a team. It's all that, man. That stuff's gone. For the most part, it's about the individual. Where can they get to? How can you help me? Right? Like winning a championship, like, some of these guys would much rather say, would you rather have, 20 touchdowns and have a Power 5 offer on the season or win a state title? Most of these guys are going to say, I'll take the offer.
Well, that's always a tough dilemma. So like from a high school standpoint, in the near term, you want the state championship. In the long term, if you're going to Alabama versus getting a state championship and you can only choose one or the other, everyone's going to choose, that situation. Everyone,
yeah.
People can say whatever they want. Like if I won a state, my team my senior year was not good. If we won a state championship and no one recruited me, or we had the record I had and I got a Division I scholarship, I could tell you this is, and I'm a coach, and this is why I think I get it. I would take the scholarship all day. You could have the state championship because I'm telling you, like, in the long run, though the state championship is great. Obviously, what does everybody really want? Both. Of course you want both.
Of course. That's a given.
Right. But
I would hope at least.
Yeah. Any player who doesn't think that they want to advance themselves, like, I mean, maybe there's a guy that would choose the state championship and, he could go. He maybe goes to heaven a little bit quicker than me and you, but
I ain't going anyway. So we're good. I own that.
And we got DM football. We got DM football chiming in with us up from. I'm not sure if it's from Facebook or Instagram, but it's good seeing Dom there. We talking a great connection to kids, always going and leading you in a great place. Yeah, I think that is the key. Dom brought this up, and I think this is a good point.
Business, bro.
Being connected with the kids, that is a big deal. I agree with that all the way.
I also think that a big thing that comes into play now is, look, let's say you recruit a kid for out of high school or wherever, or in the transfer, wherever. You're recruiting a kid. He doesn't come to you. You keep that relationship with the kid. You don't cut it off. You don't get salty. You don't do whatever, because you never know when this kid could bounce back. So now you just recruit him on the back end. Like, hey, you didn't come to me the first time. I kind of told you so. But, hey, now look, you got a clear slate. It is what it is. Now you got it.
I think that the development, you also have to take, and this is hard in football because you have to understand that, like, though everybody has egos, you can't tie your ego to a particular athlete. You want to always do the best you can, try to help them as much as you can.
100%.
but don't. This is, I think, the mistake coaches maybe make.
They get so
They're
defensive.
expecting somebody to come up to them and say, and they're, when kids do it, it's amazing. I love it when a kid comes and shows gratitude. It's great. But they expect gratitude from them helping, and that's a mistake. You help with no expectation.
Because part of, and I think for me, understanding this at a young age as a coach was that, like, that's part of your job, bro.
That's your job.
Part of your job is, if that guy wants to play college football, right? Whatever level, I find him a spot.
Right.
That's part of this. That's what's expected. I don't need the pat on the back for, hey, coach, I really appreciate. No, man.
You're the greatest coach I ever had.
Like, oh, coach, thank you so much. Bro, understand, like, I see something in you, right? And I'm pushing you to this level, like, because I see that. That's why I'm doing this, so that you can see a version of yourself that you don't see right now. Like, you'll thank me in 5-10 years. And if you don't, that's fine too, bro. Like, I know I did what was necessary for us to get to the next level, because not only is it about the team, but it's also about you as an individual. And that goes along with, it's the same as, putting a guy at a Power 5 school on a full ride, and then a guy that doesn't play college football, but goes out into the world and is still successful using the tools that you gave him as a coach, is what separates certain guys. Now, I understand at the college level, it's different, right? It's different because the relationships that you have, and guys are just, everybody has their own thing. But it's trickling down now into high school as well. But listen, every coach can still impact players on that level, no matter what it is, right? And I just think that's important. I don't want coaches, and I don't think I don't want some of these guys to think that, like, just because it's quote unquote a business now, doesn't mean that what you do and how you treat these certain players doesn't affect them.
Agreed. And I think that's,
and I think it's an issue that a lot of these younger coaches, and I don't want to sound like that guy that's like, oh, the whatever, is the need.
Wisdom. It's lack of wisdom.
The need for now, though, right? Like, man, like, you remember coming up, pay your dues, man. Like, sit in the room, be a sponge, don't open your mouth. And if you do have something to say, you better damn well understand that, like, you're going to get 7 different point of views coming at you because you're the youngest. And what do you know? Right. So if you can prove that, just continue to do the work and, do the jobs nobody wants to do and all those kind of stuff. Like, I'm old school in regards to so many of these young guys just come up, and just because, they have a whatever record on Madden, they feel like, hey, I can call plays.
Yes.
Like, come on, man. Like, take the backpack off and coach.
Well, that's a whole different aspect. Bob actually brought up a good, interesting point. I'll put this out there. He said it seems like college football's turned into high school youth football without the NIL deals. I think that there is an aspect to that because, see, there's two elements that are pushing in both ends, right? You have the NFL model, okay, which obviously is a business, has those, I talk about those breakouts of those 3 levels, right? Breakout of, they have the business aspect, you have the coaching aspect, you have the personnel aspect. Those are 3 things involved in
underneath the umbrella.
Underneath, you have youth football, which is organizationally built, not necessarily for profit by organization, but it doesn't matter whether it's nonprofit or for profit. The model is a business-based model.
Correct.
You have to take in a certain amount of money to get uniforms, do all those kind of things. Okay. High school, public school, that's not the case. Parochial school, it is obviously parochial school. You're going to have a mix of it. But it's a situation where those 2 down and up sides are really pushing on college football, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what happens is eventually you get to a point where, in order for college football to fulfill what is going to happen when they go to the pros, you have to get a model that somehow the college football model was contradictory to all the other models. And so what you have a little more like the high school model, but contradictory to all the other models, okay, and especially the NFL. This is why I always bring up the point of soccer or baseball in a sense, but soccer in Europe is really a it's really an example of kind of what college football is becoming, because they take kids through a system, right? And that system, whatever name you have it, when it's Alabama, or Carolina Panther University, right? It's part of a system, right? And a system that takes them through. The soccer system is basically two ways. You go two ways. You're basically a club recreation guy.
Yep.
I mean, it's not really recreation, but like, I don't know, you play, you might compete, but you're never going to have a chance to earn any money, right?
Right.
Or you're on a path to maybe be a pro. And those are two very distinct paths that the kids find out probably in their teenage years, because there is no you don't play sports in high school in Europe or in England. You play for your club, and then high school is high school. So like, what do they call it? Secondary school? I don't know. Same thing. You play for your whatever they call it. Now, I used to laugh at that model. Laugh at it. Like, I used to think, because I played college football, I said the university model is the much better model. What I never understood was it may have been a better model, but as long as you have pro sports, it wasn't a sustainable.
Right. You can't, there's not any way to continue it.
It's no way to long-term continue. The soccer model, which probably goes 100 years before our university models, right? The soccer model is like, hey, you go to school to go to school, college, high school, whatever they call it, element. You go to school to go to school. And yes, our school might have, I don't know, an after-school club soccer team, but that's not.
It's almost like they were separate.
They're separated.
Separated.
Now, you see it at youth sports now. You do, right? Like, I use my son. He plays on St. Leo's basketball team. He plays on a rec team, and he plays on a travel team, right? Those are three different areas, three distinct different areas, three distinct different objectives. And that's how and that's pushing up on the college model, and the NFL is pushing down below on it. And same thing with the NBA.
Right. Everything gets squeezed. And look, and we do obviously things here that are different than,
No, what I'm saying is sustainability. Like, basically, it's almost like they said many, I don't know when they came up with it. And I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm saying they must have said at one point is like, hey, sports are sports. Sports are sports. People who want to play sports, they should follow sports. When they go to school, they go to school, right? What we've done, which I thought was originally brilliant in America.
Right. We smashed it all together and said, look, you can go to school and you can play sports. And you're now almost, rather than, no, you're not an academic, hyper-focused, and that's all you do. You're not athletics, hyper-focused, that's all you do. We're going to smash them together. And now you're kind of taking away from each, right? Because now you can't focus all of your energy on sports because you got to go to school, and you can't focus all of your on school because you got to play sports or you're playing sports. So it's like, well, you're asking me to do, rather than just be great at one thing, you're asking me to be kind of like okay at both. So
right. And so I think that it's a very difficult thing. And then you see, because you're going to have outside organizations, like, and for years, schools fought against outside organizations, but you can't, like, it's America. Derek,
you're not going to tell me what, I can do what I want to do.
In America, Derek DePasco could turn around and say, I'm going to start the Derek DePasco basketball organization, right?
Who's to stop you?
Who wants to train with me? Who wants to play in my organization? Right. So
I can do things that, like, if I'm affiliated with the school, I can't do.
Correct. It's interesting. And now it's all intertwined and it's become.
Yeah, there's no, like, you can't,
people aren't happy. People aren't happy. Like, if you're on one side, you're not happy. If you're on the other side, you're not happy. And because you think it should be one way. If you're on the outside organization side, you think it should be one way. If you're in the school aspect or the university aspect, you think it should be one way. it's really, really interesting. And the way that America works is, which I think is the beauty of it. America is just like, and it should be this way. I'm not going to put a law in for you guys to figure this out. You figure out whatever the people want is what's going to happen. So if the people put pressure this way, and so that's worked its way right through college football and the transfer portal system. And so the coaches are like, oh my God, I'm doing 50 jobs. Eventually, if they figure out how to embrace it the right way, especially the big universities first,
of course,
with departments, then you could say, okay,
right.
Wide receiver coach, guess what? Out of season, out of your coach, you now, like the NFL guys, you can go take a month vacation because the recruiting guys are bringing in the guys for you.
And then now look, if you want to be involved,
you can.
I'll pay you more.
You don't have to though. And
absolutely. You look at guys, I look at guys that are labeled like good recruiters, right? Or listen, to have that double edge, like not only is he a great coach, but he's a great recruiter, right? Now think about it. Okay, those are your rarities, your Brian Hartlines, your Fran Browns, right? Like names wherever.
Pay them whatever they need. You need to have
absolutely, them. Dude. Those guys now, there you go. Now, you want to get to that level? Well, man, get better at your damn job, right? And even when you're only supposed to be doing this, maybe you do a little bit more of that, or maybe like. And now look, that's where it's going to be. Hey, it's a younger man's game. Yeah, man, because if I got to get home to the wife and kids, I can't be spending all those time in the office. Whereas now, if I'm a younger guy, I should be burning the candle at both ends because I can. Now that's a whole different world, and then I think the happy balance of both on a staff is what creates greatness, right? Like I got a family guy that's an OG, but I got a young buck who's willing to sleep in the office and do all the craziness. Like now get that happy medium, balance the wisdom with the young energy. And like, now we're cooking with gas. I get that for every position. Then I get that in my media department. Then I get that in my business people. And ultimately, when we all sit at this table, like we're going to shoot stuff, like we're going to come at each other and whatever, but it's all about at the end of the day, like when we hold up the national championship trophy, like all of y'all are getting rings.
Well, and that's what they do, by the way, in the NFL. So
you think that the secretary or the administrator,
they all get a ring. They all
you
get
think
rings.
the lady in the cafeteria, like hell yeah. And that's what I think Dion has embraced. And you see it, obviously, it's easy to reference him because he's doing his show, right? Or he puts this stuff out in the limelight for people to see, right? But I think it's a model that a lot of places are doing. They're just not as open and out in the public with it. But the people, like Dom said, it's a people business, right? The more you show you care about everybody in itself, now everybody's on the same positive path. When things listen, because we know how it is, things go astray, things go awry, stuff happens. Now those people aren't going to be so quick to be like, well, told you so, or yep, that's shit, or you know what I mean? And they're going to be like, look, this is a pretty good dude and I think he'll get it right, so let's give him the chance, right? And now maybe guys are getting fired after midway through their first year.
I agree with all of that. I think that what do they call division of labor? Division of labor. That's an old economic term. Division of labor basically means let me not butcher the definition, but it basically means everybody has a specific job. And
it's the same thing like the factory system, bro. Like
the assignment, the assignment of different parts of the manufacturing process or task to different people in order to improve
the assembly line,
efficiency.
Bro. Like you start with the body, you put the wheel on, you screw this, you do that, you go here. Everybody's got their job, much like a football team. You're the center, you do this. You're a guard, you do this. You're a receiver, you do this. Do your damn job at the highest level possible, and then when we all do it together, we win. Yep.
And the guys that are doing it and figuring it out are going to continue to succeed.
And the other thing is, I think it's something to like. I think anybody, not anybody, but majority of people could accomplish it, but to sustain it, your Nick Sabans, your Kirby Smarts, right? To have those years and years and years of,
And they're the rarities that are able to be the CEO. Like that's the hard part for a lot of those guys. They're either a great head coach, but not a CEO.
You're either really good here.
But those guys are CEOs.
It's the same thing. Like if you were doing, listen, I would love for them to pick category, like how Madden does it for coaches, and pick, 10 different categories. Like this guy is really good at this, and he's not good at this, and he's really good at this. And I would love to see.
Yeah, that would be cool.
Like I think that would be
super cool.
Like we got to come up with like 10 parameters or however many you want to do. Like,
right.
Hey, this guy is, he's a leader. Okay. Oh, well, this guy is XO guy, or this guy is really good at his marketing, or, this guy, whatever.
Yeah.
I just think that would be cool to do and just see. And I'll say, like, I think the other part of it is like, likability. Do his players like to play for him? Now, some guys, because I know some of my best coaches I couldn't stand playing for. But in the long run, did I understand why they were that way? Absolutely. Now, did they have to be like that all the damn time? No, they could have took the guard down every now and then. But you know what? Those guys got the most out of me. And that's me personally, right? Some guys aren't like that. Right?
Yeah.
But I think that's a huge key is like, look, man, you think all these guys like when Nick Saban rips their ass? No, but they know that, hey, this guy's going to get me to the freaking NFL.
Nick Saban, and I'm curious to see what happens in the next couple of years, because this is the most years they've gone without being a champ.
If this group that's about to graduate next year doesn't win a national championship, it'll be the first group that's gone through all their years and not won.
Wow.
Since he's been there, and he's been there since what, 2010, 2009, I think it was, maybe.
That's interesting.
I mean, dude, even look like Clemson. Everybody was like, oh man, Clemson gonna be like
unbelievable.
Oh boy. Bye.
Transfer portal knocked that out.
Transfer portal. Guy, one thing said about it, nope, not good. Now all of a sudden you got the number one quarterback in the building to now he wants to leave, and now he's going on to his third school already. So okay. Then you got like, even Georgia, right? Like, okay, I've been there. Now all of a sudden they lose that game. Now they're out and they're not even in the playoff. Like, okay. Now I don't think they're going anywhere, but it's also like the reasons that you've seen the TCUs hit on it for a year, or this year Washington hit on it for a year. And now with this whole thing expanded to 12 teams, now we're really rolling the dice. Even though they're still going to complain and be like, oh, well, what about 13? There's, 12, 13 deserves to be it. It's just how it works.
The more teams you add, the greater chance that it's not the same teams that win. That's just the reality. Look at FCS. And the same teams don't win all the time at FCS.
Absolutely not. Look at Division
16
3.
teams. There's 16 teams in there. Something can happen any time.
Look at Division 3. Like your powerhouses of long ago of Wisconsin Whitewater, Mount Union, all of these places that whatever. Freaking Cortland State wins the D3 national championship this year.
Eventually, everything changes,
dude. It is what it is. And listen, awesome. if you don't adapt, you die. We both,
yeah, so absolutely.
Kudos to some of these old heads. Like, everybody wants to say Nick Saban, but like he's embraced every little change and everything. He may not agree with it or like it, but he knows what he has to do to get it done in order to be successful.
No doubt. Great podcast today. And the only reason I'm cutting it off, because we could talk for much longer, is that I got to sauna it up. I only get my appointment once a week.
Go get it, buddy.
And
sweat it out.
I gotta sweat it out so I don't get too big.
Sweat to the oldies. Gene Simmons.
Was it Gene? What was his name? Was that Gene?
I don't know. I think Gene Simmons. Isn't that the Kiss guy?
Oh yeah, sweat to the oldies was Richard Simmons.
Even better.
Wasn't there a Netflix?
That's the 80s aerobic guy wearing wigwams and shit.
Yeah, wasn't there a Netflix thing on like where is Richard Simmons? Like they were trying to find him.
Yeah, because they didn't understand that why he worked out so much and still looked the same.
I didn't know that.
Guy's doing aerobics for like, 30
he's going for zero sub so he can. You're
like, yeah, man, that guy looks great. Like, I think he still looks the same as when he started it with the same pair of socks.
Richard Simmons.
All right, buddy.
All right, man. Great podcast.
Good stuff.
All right.
Take care, guys.
we'll get out of here and move on as soon as I can find the nice letter.